Nope. There we go. So we would like to welcome Dr. Mary Maloney. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak. As all of you know, the topic tonight is just say no. And she is definitely an expert in the field. So we are so appreciative. I do want to mention that Dr. Maloney is not getting paid to speak. She is doing this as a WDS member and for the betterment of the society, and is not getting paid. I'd also like to mention that there are upcoming events, so please feel free and check the WDS website for more options. Sorry. And then I will have one more thing to announce, and that's the applications are open for the UIM Resident Aesthetic Research Mentorship Award. This award is open to underrepresented in medicine PGY2 or PGY3 dermatology residents to develop mentoring relationships in aesthetic and procedural dermatology. Along with mentorship, the program is designed for successful execution and completion of a research-based project that should be appropriate for publication and/or presentation at a professional dermatology meeting. Further information, including the link to the application, can be found on the WDS website. The application period closes on October 17th, 2022. So if you are interested, just so you're aware of that. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and you can reserve chat for chatting and comments. And Dr. Maloney will answer all your questions at the end. So take it away.
All right, this is the part that we practiced, and I push share screen, and I choose this, and I choose this. And I have to tell you that I am so technologically advanced because I couldn't do that 2 years ago. And so I'm very, very excited. I'm excited always to give this talk. And as I get to my disclosures, so we are having trouble advancing. I can't make it advance here. It makes a nice noise when it doesn't advance.
It is. Maybe exit out of it.
Go out and come in again?
Yeah.
Okay. Share screen.
Oh, try pressing the space bar to advance, not the arrow keys. Thank you, attendee.
Okey-doke. All right, let's.
Nothing.
Nope.
All right, let me try to pull them up on mine.
Okay. I'll stop sharing.
Nope. Sorry.
I was so proud of myself.
I was too. I thought we were doing good. Okay. Yep, there we go. Okay, I guess I'll run the slides.
Well, here, let me see if my arrow.
Do you want me to exit out?
Yeah, why don't you exit out?
Okay.
Because you have another meeting.
Sorry.
Let me try one more round.
Okay. I did not mean to do that.
I'm going to share my screen. We'll do that. Okay, I'm good. It worked.
Okay.
I'm a
And-
genius. So
So you should
I
be
have
able
no
to.
conflicts of
Stop.
interest.
There we go.
Are you set?
I should be out
I
of
have no
it. It's you now.
It is me. Yes,
Yeah.
I advanced. So I have no conflicts of interest to report for this presentation, except I have just demonstrated that I'm not very good at PowerPoints yet on Zoom, but I'm improving clearly because I got it now. And my other conflict is that I have done most of the mistakes that I'm going to be talking about as we go through. And so my conflict of interest, I suppose, is that you can't tell anybody how bad I have been in the past and how much I've learned. Notes for the audience, again, to ask a question, click Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and we will do those at the end of the session. If you have copies of the handout there for your personal use, and no one's paying me. Maybe we could, no, we don't need to change that. I love doing this. The dirty little trick about the word no. We don't like to hear it. And quite honestly, we don't like to say it. It is a dirty word. And we all know that if we have a 2-year-old who says nothing but no. But when we do, what do we do then? And the questions that you have to ask yourself when you hear a no to a request that you have had is, do you need to go to the mat just because you don't like to lose? And it is very, very hard to lose when you've worked hard on doing something and you've presented it and you've been told no. You need to ask yourself if what you are asking for or recommending be done is mission critical to the organization and even to you. And you also need to ask if there's a compromise. And we're going to talk about all of this. Sometimes a compromise is absolutely critical to having a solution, and a solution that everyone can live with. Do you need to get just part of the loaf to move whatever you're doing forward? And also to be seen as a team player. One of the worst things that can happen is that you can get the whole loaf or everything you want, but you lose the respect, or you're not going to get another yes anytime in the future because you have pushed so hard. The other thing is, whenever we negotiate, we need to establish a position, but then be willing to move and listen and to hear what other people say. Sometimes a compromise, however, is the death of a project. And you need to walk into any negotiation knowing what you can do as far as compromise is concerned, or if there is no compromise that will allow you to be successful. It is very important for us to be honest with ourselves as we try and decide if a no is actually the death of an entire project. And as I've mentioned, it is desperately important to know when to compromise. So, examples of a compromise. You want to build a ship that's 1,000 feet long, while your financier only wants to finance a ship 600 feet long. You have figures and data that show you will make money and do well at 800 feet. but you'll lose money at 600 feet. So you actually can compromise a great deal and still be very successful. And that is the important thing to know walking in to any discussion. All right, compromise number 2. You want to put lifeboats on your ship for all the passengers and crew. However, your shipbuilding contractor doesn't think they're pretty, and they mar the appearance of the ship, and so only want to put on enough for part of the passengers because the ship is unsinkable. Well, I guess we all know how that one turned out, right? A medical compromise, and this is one that was actually real for me. I wanted a code card on the dermatology floor. We do big surgeries. We have people that come in with heart disease. It seemed pretty no-brainer to me that we would get a code card. The institution doesn't feel that it's important. After all, we're only dermatologists. So do you compromise? Could you get by with an AED? What is your position on this? We're actually going to come back to this in a few minutes. So how did the negotiation go? Well, the first thing, as always, you need to know all the data. You need to listen. And you need not to get angry. Data is always the key to the negotiation. And you need to come prepared with all the information. You may not want to use all the information, but you need to know it. You don't want to have them have data you don't know and to use it against you in an argument where you have to contradict it without really having the information to do it. If they ask for more data, go ahead and get it. Go ahead and say, fine, we'll meet again in 3 weeks and I will have that information for you. You may go in with data that you never ever use, but if you don't have it and they ask for it, you may get a losing no. So you need to be very aware of what you need and what you know. Anger. Did you get mad? Did you get annoyed? Did you demonstrate your anger, annoyance, or frustration in your voice and how you looked, in your body language? And here is a slightly out of focus picture of a not so nice confrontation that clearly is going to be a lose for everyone, but particularly for you if you're asking for something. And I have to tell you that that woman with dark hair leaning over her computer was, on several occasions in my career, me. And it never helped the argument. And I have learned to have a much greater poker face when I go into negotiation. You must look like you're open to new ideas. You must, and that includes having a slight smile on your face, not a sneer, a smile, leaning into the conversation, not so much that you're getting in someone else's space, but so that you look engaged, and a very calm demeanor. You must look friendly. You must look nice. You must not point. You must not cross your arms. You must not put your hands on your hips. And if you really can't look bored, because that's interpreted as a negative sort of reaction. And these kinds of behaviors breed negativity and can interfere with you even getting to hear, or getting someone to hear you rather, listening is one of the things that we practice the least. One of the things that we tend to do when we're in conversation with someone is, as they say a word, a phrase, tell a story, we stop listening as we formulate our response or get in our mind this next story we want to tell. Well, that reminds me of, as you interrupt and go marching on. It is important. It's sort of like mindfulness training. Sometimes I call it mindlessness training by mistake. That you absolutely focus on the person. You're looking them in the eye. Your mind hasn't gone 10 miles away in what I call the squirrel response. Squirrel, and that you understand what they're saying. So are you listening to them, or are you formulating your arguments as they're talking? If you listen, do you understand what's important to the other side? And if you don't, you need to clarify. You need one of those sentences that we all learned when we were doing psychiatry. I heard you say, and you really do need to do this. I heard you say that you don't like the appearance of lifeboats. Is that what you were meaning, or did I miss the fact that you didn't think you could get enough lifeboats on the boat for everyone to get out? Because we could paint the lifeboats a different color, if that would help. Did you delve into areas of compromise, as I just demonstrated? We can paint the lifeboats. Or were you only looking at the position that you've already taken, that you need all the lifeboats? I actually agree, you need the lifeboats. But and then when you're given a no, what goes on in your head, in your mind, as you listen to this? What actually is the most important after someone has denied you a project, said no to an idea? You have to know what's important at this point. Is it the relationship, or is it the ask? And is there a compromise that allows you to get both? What is the worst outcome is to lose relationship and not get what you want. And you do that when you get angry and when you won't compromise. So always, you can even ask someone, is there a compromised position that we could talk about as we try and think this problem through? If you push for the decision that you want, will it ruin your chances of future work that you need to get done? Or your position and rise in an organization, or even in your job? Compromise can frequently be the win-win, and I think we all know that. Knowing what is important to the other side, however, is crucial to forging that compromise. So go even further than beyond words and really start asking what is important to the other side. Ask them to explain what keeps them from saying yes. Sometimes when you do that, actually, you find that they've just decided the project wouldn't work and they didn't want to listen any further, and they will admit that. You know, I just haven't had enough time to think this through. You can get a lot of information as to why that no came at you and how you can restructure to either represent or tweak your idea or your position enough to get a yes in the long run. The best alternative to a negotiated agreement. There is a book that talks a lot about BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. BATNA always drove me a little nuts, so I continue to call BATNA a compromise. Develop your alternatives. What actions will you take if you can't reach an agreement? And that's really important for you to know. So I was at UMass and we wanted to become a department. And we were a division of the Department of Medicine. And I had a meeting with the CEO of the organization and the dean of the medical school, and the dean was absolutely adamant that he didn't have the time or the money to make dermatology a department at that time. And he didn't think it was necessarily that important. And that just made me see red, absolutely red. And as we left, I put my hands on my hips. There's mistake number one. And with a tone of voice that clearly indicated that I was angry and thought that he was wrong, told him that I expected him, I'm telling the dean, I expect him to come to my department and explain why he said no. Oh my God, how could I do any more wrong things? I could have spit or, but I really handled it incredibly badly. And so I did, in fact, calm down, and I never asked him to come to the department and explain himself. And I let the dust settle. And I started to improve the data and the ideas and the reasons so that he could see that there was a problem that needed a solution. And that he had the opportunity to select an alternative that seemed better as I stayed flexible. And I needed to understand why he said no. It took me a little while to understand. They were tough times. There wasn't a lot of money, although the medical school always seemed to have some money. He had just made another department and had to live up to the financial agreements he had already made to that group to bring on a chair, to provide research money, and to do a lot of things that would be very important. What I thought and did and learned as I listened to other people, and I hadn't been smart enough to listen to the dean, but he actually had said the things and they made their way through my brain, is that one of the things that bothered him tremendously was he didn't have enough money to offer to get a new chair, to do a search, because a search costs anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 for a chair. And he didn't have money to entice a new chair to come, which is research money or a slush fund that they can use to improve the department. And so I developed some alternative asks. Could we become a department if I was the interim chair so you didn't have to fund a search? And I did not ask for a startup package. I just took the job without a startup package. An interesting approach. And so I continued to concentrate on the merits and not the position because we felt that we would be better served. And could I change his game? Yes, I could change his game by freeing up his money. I could have asked the CEO of the organization, who believed we should be a department, to come and help out and to be present as we renegotiated. I didn't mean him when I was calm. I had lost that day, and I didn't do the thing that I should have done that day, which was be gracious. But I did correct my error over the next several days or weeks, thanking him for his time and telling him that I would try and come up with an idea that would help us move to departmental status in a way that would be beneficial for the organization. Not suggesting that he needed to change, but suggesting that I might change, or I might at least change the ask. And in that way, you actually live to play another day. And he left the concept of becoming a department on the table, making it very easy. And it gave us a chance for a redo. Now, it took us 8 years to become a department. So the last thing that I actually left off this slide is patience. If you have an idea that is important, and it doesn't matter if you are in an academic institution or in a large group practice or even a small group practice, if you have an idea that's going to improve the practice, you may take time to get everyone to see the wisdom of your suggestion, whether it be new instruments, a different faculty member, a new person to do consults for the group that you work with so that everyone doesn't have to share that response. There's so many areas where we bring ideas forward, and don't be discouraged. Have patience to get there in the end. Let's go back to our code card, because we didn't ever get a code card. Move away from the final answer of no, you can't have a code card. Concentrate on the things that you agree on. Cardiac events can occur anywhere. And in fact, there are AEDs throughout airports, train stations, grocery stores these days. They are everywhere. We have even been denied an AED. That trained people should use code cards, and that dermatologists had in our group had in fact passed the ACLS course. So we had people who were trained to use the code card. And time is heart muscle. Those were the areas of common agreement that everyone could agree on. And that really helped us at least move forward in a small way. So change the game. Don't defend your ideas. Code cards should be in dermatology. You can change that idea to code cards should be available to all patients. And just because someone has come to a dermatology appointment and not a cardiology appointment, they shouldn't be denied the opportunity for resuscitation. You can recast an attack on you as an attack on the problem. So rather than feeling that as you sit across the table, they are demeaning you as a dermatologist, you can change that to the dynamic of asking them, do you say that all dermatologists are totally unable to master a code situation? Ask questions and pause. What is our goal on patient care? Pause. What should we do if the ambulance doesn't come? Pause. Use silence. Psychiatrists are great at using silence. Many of us are not so good. Silence is a space to be filled. It's like an empty milk jug in the refrigerator. It's useless. But silence isn't useless. Because if you have silence, the other person tends to want to fill that silence for you and will usually bring up another point that may end up being the key to unlocking the situation. Allow them to ask questions of you. So what questions do you have that I could help you understand our problem better? Again, remember, bring your data. When we were talking about our code carts, we had 2 people code in our waiting room. They weren't even patients. They were the spouses of the patients. And that seemed pretty significant to us. That was over a year and a half, but that still seemed pretty significant to us. And then allow them to come up with a possible compromise. Sometimes that's better than our bringing the compromise forward. And you can actually ask them, do you have a suggestion for compromise? I see that I'm frozen in my picture, and I hope that doesn't mean that you can't hear me. If you can't hear me, would someone send me a chat?
I can still
I
hear
don't
you.
mind.
I can still hear you.
Perfect. I will continue on, and just know that I have actually moved my head in the last minute or two. If the other side is working from a position of power, they may not move into a mediated discussion. The CEO has no reason to negotiate with me if he thinks I'm wrong, because he's the boss. Any boss of a large multi-specialty practice is the boss. Any owner of a private practice is the boss. Better to be the boss. Of course, we all would agree with that. Sometimes you lose. Is this issue mission critical? So our real mission is to provide excellent dermatologic care to all patients who come to see us. And we believe that they also need to receive care if they should have a code in our office, but it doesn't actually change our mission. And so can you find another way around the problem? We did. We bought an AED, and we ordered the drugs that one needs to run a code ourselves. And we stocked the drugs in a cabinet, in a little hand bucket to come out, including an IV and fluids. And we dated everything, and we check it regularly. And so, yes, we have the ability to run a mini code, at least until we can get an anesthesiologist to come up, or the rescue squad comes. So if it's not important at all to your mission, you can walk away and not waste your capital on something where you have demonstrated that you are truly not going to change other people's minds at all. And you can say, okay, there's a code cart in the next clinic. In our instance, there was not a code cart on our floor. And so we chose the first alternative, and we sort of made our own code cart. We knew all the drugs that needed to go in it, and we ordered them all, and we had everything, including the AED. We didn't have a true defibrillator, but we did have an AED. So compromise actually got us what we wanted in a very backward way of having been told no, but still finding a way on our own to solve our problem. Always remember that one issue is not a career. One issue is one issue. And next year or next month or next week, there'll be another different issue that you may be able to make some traction on. You always need to maintain enough capital to stay in the game. So I have known people, and at least I won't own this personally, who will fight every battle down to the last nail until they have no capital in the organization whatsoever. And so don't be one of those people, because losing will become the knee-jerk reaction to those people around you. You will get no's just because they say, oh, here comes Mary again. No. So maintain always the sense that you are working for your patients and the organization in which you work, whether it be large or small. And remember, tomorrow is in fact another day. And sometimes no is a blessing in disguise. You have negotiated new space for your office, and suddenly you hear that there will be no counters or cabinets included. You can put in what you want at your own expense, threaten to walk away, or find a middle ground. Decrease rent, split the expenses. And so you can see that in a situation like this, you have choices, which include walking away. It's like when we talk to our patients about treatment or no treatment, they always have the choice to not treat and walk away. We actually are committed to always being available should they change their mind, but the person who owns your building may not feel that way. So that may be an issue. I have another example. You feel you've worked hard and been a leader and deserve a raise in your organization. Your chair or boss sends you a somewhat curt email saying, no, it can't be afforded this year. You've been given a no, and you decide to make lemonade out of lemons. And so you gather a bunch of information about the income collected in your name, the grants you have, the teaching you do, any combination of that, the telemedicine you do, the community activities you do. You take all of this information to your boss for discussion in a very calm voice. The chair acknowledges that you've done all you should have done, but isn't sure that there's enough money this year due to COVID to allow a raise. So, in the idea of compromise, you have come armed with a solution, and you suggest a smaller than the raise that you've asked for bonus this year, with support for a raise next year. Your chair must completely happy. Now, as a happy employee, it's costing him less money, and he's not, and you haven't had a scene in his office or her office, and so they quickly agree to this, and you both leave the meeting actually smiling and feeling very good. You've had a wonderful compromise. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because we do have some more time and still have time for questions about how to say no to an opportunity. People frequently think that when they're starting their career, they have to say yes to everything because somebody might not ask again, because they need to be seen as rising up through the structure of an organization that they belong to, Women's Derm, and whatever it may be. You want to publish, you want recognition, you want all of those things. But let me tell you something, and that is not performing well is usually worse than saying no. So if you don't come to the meetings, if you don't get your chapter in on time, if you fall down in whatever way and don't work with someone who's asked you to be a panelist at a meeting, you don't get asked a second time when you do something poorly. So always know that if you have the passion and or the time to do a project or an appointment, that's the time to move forward. And you have to be very aware of your family needs, of your needs, and how excited you are to do things outside of medicine. You do have to remember that on the day you graduate from medical school, your title becomes doctor. And it is the exact same title you will have when you retire 50 years later. And so the things that we do are our passion, because there's not a super doctor or a CEO doctor, it's doctor. And so we find our passion and move through it because that's the thing that makes us grow. If you have the time and the commitment and you're asked to do something, agree with enthusiasm. None of this, yeah, I think I can squeeze that in. You need to be enthusiastic. And it doesn't matter if you're newly out of residency or a resident, or whether you're 71 years old. If somebody asks you to do something and you want to do it with enthusiasm. If it is a committee appointment, attend 90% of the meetings and participate. Do not be the person who is totally silent. You need to be engaged and involved. And in these days of Zoom, you don't turn off your camera and do the dishes. You actually stay in your seat and stay involved. If it's a project, do it well and do it on time. Now, here is the other side of the coin. If you decide you don't want to do the project, whether it be time or passion, thank the asker. If it's not an area of interest for you, say that. Say that. That's really not an area that I have a lot of expertise in. And then tell them what you are passionate about. So I don't really like vulvar dermatoses, but I really love nail things. And I actually was asked once to do a book chapter on how to set up an office. I wasn't passionate about it, but it was interesting, and I did it. And 10 years later, somebody realized that I'd written that before, and they came to me and they said, will you do this chapter? Again, I mean, for a different book, different time and place, will you write that? And I didn't say no. And I was bored. I had done that. It wasn't something that any longer excited me. I was late in my submission, and I hated every minute of it. I like to think it was a good chapter, but it didn't make me happy. I needed to say, thanks so much. I've written that once, and I'm afraid that I wouldn't be as passionate writing it again. But thank you very much for your interest. And if you don't have time, tell them, I was just asked to do something else. And I am really afraid that if I try and do both of these projects, I might do a bad job or be late. And if I'm one of those things, you'll never want to work with me again. But I do hope you'll ask me again when I haven't just accepted something. And it's really, people don't mind hearing that. And they like you for your honesty, either of those scenarios. And they actually will come back to you in the future and remember your honesty, and you'll get asked to do things. So do what you're passionate about, enjoy every minute of it, and do it without guilt. Because, as my mother used to tell me, guilt is the gift that keeps on giving. So we have a couple of questions. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll stop sharing and go to view gallery and question and answer. So both of those were, in fact, helpful comments. So now I will open it up to questions. Any questions, any comments? Anybody still awake? Can anyone hear me? Here we go. A couple of questions. Thank you. You're welcome. How do you handle it when the person in a position of power, particularly when it's a man, is getting emotional and angry? Great question. And I will give you my tricks. And the angrier they get, the calmer I get. Now, sometimes that just makes them angrier. But if you match them with hands on the hip and a raised voice, you will enter into what was once described to me as the pissing contest. And they said, do you know what happens in a pissing contest? And I said, no. And they said, everybody gets covered in piss. And somebody has to be the adult in those conversations. So if you can manage it, I highly recommend staying calm and suggesting either a break or rescheduling the meeting or asking what you can do to help calm the situation down and make everyone more comfortable. Again, it's a little bit confrontational, but it does get the point across that someone is losing their temper, and you can be very proud of the fact that it's not you. Any other questions? Is there another question down there? Yes. I worry saying no to opportunities as a resident. I do not have time, as it may look like a lack of motivation. Do you have any advice on how to address this? I think that most residents want to do one or two projects, but I think that when you get more than that, that you are absolutely out of time. And I think you have to tell someone who asks you that you don't have the time to do a good job. It's also helpful to go to a faculty member who may be an ally for you and say, so-and-so is pushing me to help them with this project, and I just feel at the moment overwhelmed because I'm already doing a small project with someone else, and I'm really working hard and feeling pretty overwhelmed and don't feel I do a good job. And get an ally to help you speak to the person who's pressuring you to join something else. I think it's always good to have an ally, and it's always good to get your program director involved, and it's always good to let people know that you have another program, a project that you're in the middle of, that you don't want to interfere with being successful in that project. If somebody doesn't understand that, the program director really does need to get involved and help you with that. Good question. Laura Gardner, I get frustrated as a resident because any suggestions we make are treated as complaining rather than constructive. Is this even approachable at that point? I think this is the time when you come in with data. If you have anything that is going to change productivity, personal engagement, or rapport, really job satisfaction, and really commitment to the organization, it's important to emphasize those points, and do it always in a manner that says that we're a family in this department. We're trying to take care of each other. We think that this might help our efficiency, help our productivity, help us get through our notes more quickly so we can get to a conference or things like that. Or so suggesting that your last if you have a noon conference, your last patient be moved back 15 minutes because you find you can't get to the conference and that's so disrespectful of the speaker. You can try and spin those in ways that people understand. It's not about complaining, it's about learning, it's about patient care, it's about efficiency, and it's about the team concept and morale, quite honestly. And that's my suggestion, and it always matters how people are looking at it. Always good to get the program director on board with your ideas and to also be an advocate, and that can frequently be very helpful. Is there a good way to handle it when you say yes to something because you think you can and you want to, and then realize that you don't? Even if it's at the question is if obviously not at the last minute, but even at the last minute, it is certainly all right to say, I'm having trouble getting this done. I need to bring somebody on to help me out. I need to do something in a different way. If it's deeply into the timeline of the project, it's better to tell people you need help rather than you don't want to do it. But if it's early in the process and you've been given 6 months to do a chapter, say, and you really find at the end of 4 weeks that you just can't get it done, I think it's perfectly all right to go back to that person and say, I just really don't think that I have the capability to get this done in the quality that you want. Could I help find somebody else to do this chapter for you or this section of the research or whatever it may be? Always, it's really nice if you offer, if you're in a program and you can offer to have somebody else help with that project rather than just abandoning and saying, I want out. So give them some ideas on how they can get their project done, and you are not going to be solely responsible or even involved because you can find somebody else who really is interested and is willing to take it over. I think anytime you do that, people are more than willing to release you, as it were, and say, that's fine. Any other questions? Those are great questions because those are all real life, even better than my Titanic. Although the captain was Edgar J. Smith of the Titanic, just in case you wanted to know. All right, well, thank you so very, very much for attending, for listening, and for your great questions. There's a real art to know, and I have not always known it. So I hope this helps you know the art of no sooner than I did. So thank you all, and good night.